getting deeper and deeper and deeper, ladies and gentlemen. More and more people are calling Essence Magazine and the Essence Fest out. There are a lot of complaints coming in. Um, we've been talking about Essence Magazine and the downfall of it I've been talking about it for damn near a decade. I put up some of my old tweets earlier today. Y'all go look at my tweets. I got tweets going back to damn near a decade ago saying how Essence is falling off. When they start putting all them tethers up there to misrepresent our culture,
Mm-hmm.
I was calling them out early. Now everybody sees what the business is. Now it's in play. Now that play is right now in action, as I told people years ago. Now with the Essence Fest, I did a broadcast about it the other day, but we're going to discuss it more because more people are calling out the foolery that happened with it. Now the Essence Fest, as we know, Essence Fest has been a staple in Foundation of Black American Culture for a minute. I think they started the Essence Fest in 94, 95, something like that, and you would have some of these phenomenal FBA legendary artists performing. It was a nice vibe out there in New
Mm-hmm.
Orleans. It reflected our FBA culture. That's when Essence Magazine knew the assignment. They had the right people at the top brass. Even the non-FBAs at Essence, they knew what the assignment was because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Essence should go back to the Susan L. Taylor days." Y'all remember Susan L. Taylor? She was the longtime um, editor in chief of
Oh, she was a pretty
Essence
lady. She was pretty
Magazine.
too. Yeah.
And she was all in the media. And as in Susan L. Taylor,
Yeah.
she was pretty cool. But the thing is, Susan L. Taylor is Caribbean.
I didn't know that.
Her parents are Caribbean.
Hold on a second. Is she?
I don't know. A lot of folks don't know that. And y'all should have known that because Susan Taylor, lovely woman, very sweet woman. But y'all remember how big her forehead was?
Susan L. Taylor.
Susan Taylor had a forehead. That was a forehead
Yeah, she did have
that
a big
was
ass
very
forehead.
non FBA. She had a very non FBA forehead.
Oh.
Sweet woman though. Sweet woman. She did the right thing at the magazine.
I thought she was okay. I
But
thought she was from America.
I knew back in the day as a kid. Like, where's she from? They don't have foreheads like this in my neighborhood. She was the editor in chief, I think, starting in 1981 up until the 90s, I think. But the thing is, Essence, it was started by four foundational Black American men. Some FBA brothers started it because they wanted to uplift Black women. And I think Susan L. Taylor was like a fashion editor at one point, and later on they elevated her to the editor in chief. But the thing is, once Essence started to change hands, I know at one point they sold it to Time Warner, and then later some non FBAs got it. They got more control over it. And let's be very honest, when the non FBA, hell, it started to really hit a snag when Time Warner got it, to be honest. It kind of started to hit a snag. And when the non FBAs
Mm.
took control of everything, let's just be real, it started going downhill and we started calling it out.
Mm.
Now I'm not trying to bash the non FBAs, but I mean when Essence, when the owners and the editor in chiefs, who's the Kenyan woman and all that, when it started to get into non FBA hands and they started bringing on all of these non FBA writers,
Mm.
and I'm telling y'all, like over a decade ago, some of the articles and some of the stuff they was putting out, it was some bullshit. A lot of it was low key attacking us, and we were calling it out a long time ago, family. They were putting some bullshit in Essence. Y'all remember we were calling them out? They were doing these stories, these weird ass stories, like 8 ways to find a white man and
Mm.
toxic black masculinity.
Mm.
Yeah, y'all
Yeah.
remember that? They got on that.
Wow.
And we were calling that out. We were saying, hey, these are foreigners who don't represent our culture
Writing this stuff about us.
pushing this filth.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting attacked by these magazines now as a culture. And then we start looking at the names of the people who's putting these articles together and who's running it. It was people who were not from our community.
Mm-hmm.
And we were telling people over a decade ago, that's a problem. That's a damn problem. Now people are seeing it for what it is. But let's go back to the Susan Taylor thing. Excuse me. Let's go back to the Susan Taylor thing. Why was Susan Taylor on code? Which was cool. That's all we want. If you come over here, you're not an FBA. If you're on code with us and you do the right thing and you're uplifting the community, we have no problem with you. When Susan L. Taylor was there, she was pretty much uplifting black womanhood. She wasn't doing all that foolery. When the tether class came in, that's when the bullshit came in. Now, what was different, family? Let's look at history here. Let's understand something. When Essence first started, it was started in 1970. I think the first publication came out around 1970. And we understand at that time, you're coming right into the height of the Black Power movement, 1970, 69, 70, 71.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were still on that Black Power wave. Everybody's rocking afros, so we were right in the storm of Black Power.
70 was still
and Black foundational American power. You understand? And a lot of these non-FBA immigrants at the time, like the Susan Taylors, they understood generally that they were guests in a Black FBA-led struggle. These people know that, we are distinct lineage. So a lot of these non-FBA immigrants, first gen and second gen and everything else, like I think Susan Taylor, I know her parents are Caribbean. I think she was born here, but her parents are Caribbean. But she understood that she was part of a society where we, Foundation of Black Americans, we had already fought for the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, all of that stuff. That was fresh in the lexicon. So the tone among a lot of these early non-FBAs, they had more gratitude and humility to a certain degree because they directly benefited for what FBAs sacrificed and bled for. You understand? And at the time, Black American culture dominated the media. 1970.
That was when Shaft.
Man, we were all over the place. Music all over the place. Fashion. We're all in the international media. The massive political movements. So yeah, FBA culture, starting in the 70s, was globally dominant. Soul, jazz, funk. I mean, civil rights. It wasn't just influential. We were the damn blueprint at that.
He forgot to mention this. The black that was 1970 was the beginning of the black exploitation era. That was when Mario Van Peebles did. People don't know this. Mario Van Peebles did the first black exploitation film, and then the white studios saw what he did independently and started making movies like Shaft and Superfly. So we were dominating movies too. The movie industry was dead until black exploitation came. Matter of fact, Shaft, they said saved. I believe it was Paramount or Warner Brothers. It saved. I believe it was Warner Brothers. It's because the studio people wasn't going to the movies in the late 80s. I mean late 60s and early 70s. And then when black movies started dropping, people were running to. And people want to make it seem like it was just black people going to see those movies. Everybody was going to see those movies back then. My brother and them was running. They said, no, it wasn't just us. We were going there. It'd be white people, Asian people. Everybody was going to see black. They was really, but now years have passed. They tried to kind of downplay it. But a lot of black look it up. I read a book about that. Black exploitation, black movies like Coffee, Shaft, Three the Hard Way, Superfly, Sweetback, which was the first one. Willie Dynamite, all those movies, Scream, Blackula, all those movies, all the Dolomite, all those movies saved the movie industry because the movies were doing bad. Movies were going downhill. A lot of studios were talking about selling their catalog. They was doing so bad in the early 70s. So yeah, they say black movies saved a lot of these studios. Then once the studios got back on their feet, they stopped putting black exploitation out and started just putting their own their own movies out, they white people out.
That time, all eyes were on foundational Black Americans.
Right.
In the 70s?
Yeah, you're right.
So to disrespect that culture, that was a no-no. That wasn't going to be allowed at that time. That you would isolate yourself from power, from
Mm-hmm.
relevance, from opportunity. So people had to align with our culture
That's
out
right.
of respect and out of necessity. You understand? Because we were still gatekeeping at that time. You couldn't disrespect us. We weren't having. Listen, how many of y'all grew up in the 70s and 80s? Can you raise your hand? Who grew up? Who was? Which one of you guys were kids in the 70s and 80s? Can I see a show of hands, please?
How they gonna
Let me
see?
see my FBA family. Which
Oh,
one of y'all? How
see.
many of y'all were children in the 70s and 80s? So y'all know what it was growing up. Let me look out because I know a lot of my audience is pretty young.
Oh shit, my bad.
Who were children in the 70s and 80s? All right. We got a lot of old schools up in here. Shout out to you guys. A lot of my audience is young. But 70s and 80s growing up, black folks weren't to be with.
Oh yeah.
We weren't disrespected. Do y'all understand? We were very codified with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have people calling us names or none. That was a no-no.
That's in the 70s.
That was a major no-no. We didn't have white folks talking to us crazy. Damn sure none of these other immigrant groups. We weren't playing that shit. And it was up at that time. It was all the way damn up. You understand? We weren't bullshitting around that time.
Black
Even
Panther.
as small children,
Mm-hmm.
we weren't playing around. Nobody was going to disrespect us as an ethnic group. That wasn't happening. So that's why man, we would run white boys off the block
Hmm.
if they even thought of doing something disrespectful. It was a whole new vibe. They gave her props. She did a great job, and they elevated her. So it was mutual respect. You did a good job. We elevated you. So there was a mutual respect there.
Her boss was Black American.
And a lot of these non FBA people had a closer cultural tie to the Black liberation movements. See, a lot of these early African and Caribbean immigrants, they they knew that they would benefit from the advancement of black people in general because they lived in our neighborhoods. They didn't have these little segregated enclaves yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to live among us for the most part. And also, they were still dealing, remember this, in the 70s, you still had countries that were still dealing with colonialism and they were still trying to get their independence
Mm-hmm.
at the time. So they couldn't really pump their chest like they were doing something. A lot of these countries these people were coming from were still colonized. You understand? So they understood white supremacy and they aligned with a lot of FBA led black power and civil rights causes because they knew what it was. You see, and they knew directly that we were helping some of these African and Caribbean nations. So it had to be respect there.
This is Tariq Nasheed talking about. I want to see if he gets the part about Stephanie Mills, but apparently Stephanie Mills said something. But yeah, I want y'all to go ahead and check that out on his YouTube channel. I don't want to use too much of his content. Tariq Radio. Go to Tariq Radio to watch this new. He just dropped this 2 hours ago. Y'all can go and check it out. But yeah, that's what they said. People said this was the first year it's been going. It's been bad. I've been hearing about Essence Fest being. I've never been, but from people that I have friends that have went, and they said in the last 2 years, people have said that it kind of bounced back. I guess the first year that they had it after the pandemic, that might have been what 2022. But then they said 2023, it was like, okay, it was still kind of okay. But then 2024 is when people was like, oh shit, this shit kind of, they was complaining about 2024 being not what it used to be. And I've even heard complaints about 2023 somewhat. But 2022, I would say 2022 and 23 from what I heard, it was still kind of, because it was fresh, it was new out the pandemic. Remember, 2020, 2021, the pandemic, I don't think they had Essence Fest. It was, it was still kind of low key, you know, the Cove thing was going on. I don't want to say the whole thing because I don't know if YouTube real fickle with that stuff, but But I've heard story. I heard last year was the beginning stages of it being horrible. People were complaining. Hotel sales went down. Then you got to remember, man, the economy is getting worse and worse. Stuff is going. Inflation is going up and up and up. People don't have the expendable income like they used to. That might have had a lot to do with the low attendance this year as well. You know what I'm saying? People didn't have the kind of money to pay for events and all that kind of stuff. And then, but besides that, other things were, I guess, foul about Essence Fest this year. But I don't know, man. For those of y'all who might have went to Essence Fest, let me know in the comments, man. What exactly was going on? What was your experience when you were there? Let's talk about it in the comments. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel.